It didn't work.
All right, it's Melissa's meeting, so.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, it is.
David, it's me
Yeah,
and
I
recording.
was just able to start it for some reason.
Oh, good.
Well, it's been recording for 14 minutes, so somehow it's been, I don't know.
In 14 minutes, but it just started recording.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay, so when we have a major release and we have terms that are slated for removal, we deprecate them rather than delete them so that we do have backward compatibility with the previous release. We add them to the just deprecated file, and however, we will never have a non-deprecated term reference a deprecated one, such as in a restriction or the range, so that might result in postponing the change to the next major release. When we have a major release, such as now, the deprecation file is removed. So all the terms that we had deprecated are actually deleted at this point. Because this is a major release and we've had a lot of changes, especially to URIs, we decided to include a suite of migration scripts to aid users in migrating their data. These are, based on Sparkle insert and delete. In the simple cases, such as name changes, the script will automatically do the updates. In more complex cases, the scripts will issue a warning that you will need to attend to. So moving on to the major changes. And by the way, please feel free to interrupt with questions or comments as we move along. So the significant major changes we've made are implementation of property naming standards. Again, this consistency idea. We've updated the model of ordered collection, numeric data types, networks, persons, and addresses. I probably won't get to all of these, but I'll cover the top 3 most important ones. So property naming standards, again, it's the idea of consistency. And in order to, the other goals were objectivity, clarity, explicitness, being idiomatic, being accurate, and aligning the names of the properties with their text definitions. So all of these things make the ontology easier to understand, easier to use, easier to develop. And the idea, again, of consistency and objectivity. So hopefully, 2 different ontologists following our naming standards would come up with the same name for the same term. The result was 62 changes to object and data type properties, URIs, and thus, because of all these changes, we decided to supply these migration scripts. The conventions that we followed, which took quite a bit of time, more time than you might think to develop, are all going to be included in the latest version of the style guide. So there are 2 types of conventions that we identified, what I'm calling, for lack of better terms, orthographic and textual. So orthographic ones have to do with sort of the trivial letter case, hyphenation, etc. Textual conventions are the harder ones to define that have to do with the actual wording of the term. So just quickly, orthographic conventions, these are pretty standard, camel casing, etc. The one that is not so fully standard is the way we handle acronyms. In order to create unambiguous word boundaries, we camel case those as well. So the more interesting things are the actual wording of names. And again, we spent quite a bit of time coming up with conventions. And these are the results that we came up with. So data type properties are always nominal. So for example, I'm not going to read through these examples. You can read the examples on the right-hand side. So data type properties are nominal. Object properties are always verbal. And this is the one that resulted in the largest number of changes. We decided to prefix is to ED forms to clarify, to make them unambiguously verbs. And we prefer ordinary verbs to the has X or is X form. So for example, we change directly preceded by to follows directly. Whereas we have precedes directly, follows directly, because we're promoting the use of the standard verb. We generally are using only present tense. That's also quite standard. Very minor exceptions, maybe last modified, cannot happen in other than in the past. So we use the past tense for that one. We use at rather than on for date times. The reason being on would typically be used with a day. At would typically be used with a time in natural language. But in order for the predicate not to make a commitment as to whether it's a date or a time or a date time, we decided to use at and let the usage clarify what it is. In general, we want to be as idiomatic as possible. We are not using any non-standard abbreviations. We're adding final prepositions where relevant. And we want to align with the textual definitions. So for example, we had parent of, the definition limited that to the biological relationship. So we changed the name to is biological parent of. Now, it's an open question whether that's really what we want the term to be, because probably in most enterprise contexts, it's legal. It's the legal parenthood that's more relevant than the biological one. That's a different question, though here we're just dealing with names. And we are not defining inverses without a compelling reason. So we did delete some of the inverses that already existed, and we plan to delete others in another major release. We want to maintain loose coupling of ontology term names. So these three examples actually didn't result in any changes to GIST. They're just principles that we formulated. Loose coupling meaning rather than saying has start time instant, if it's pointing at a time instant, in case we change our model and use a different object type instead of time instant, we wouldn't have to change the name of the property. These particular examples are moot because we're redoing our time model, but the point is clear. We don't want the ontology names to reference other terms in the ontology, but to be sort of more meaning based. We generally want to go up rather than down a tree if there's a hierarchy. This is a bit tricky, and there will be a lot of exceptions to this, but generally this will minimize the query paths that have to be followed. And we want word boundaries to be consistent across the ontology rather than following natural language. So even though the word subcategory exists, the word supercategory doesn't really exist. So we'd rather have the terms be consistent rather than have to figure out which word exists and which doesn't. So that is all I have about the textual conventions, unless there's any unless there are any questions or comments.
Looks wonderful. Really nice.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, this is great. Hey, the only question there, the has broader, are we using SCOS broader? They don't say has broader, do they?
No. So these are just hypothetical examples on this page.
Okay. Okay.
It's just again, these were just because we were thinking of principles. We said, oh, what if, we went a little bit beyond just to think of some other principles too. But these three don't actually didn't actually lead to any changes in GIST. No, we're using subcategory and supercategory rather than broader and narrower.
Okay.
And and SCOS itself always uses broader,
Right.
which is, that's just another one that the directionality has to be clear. Because it's.
Yep. Maybe we should send this to SCOS. Take some
broader
ambiguity out of that.
is always.
The label says has broader.
Oh,
No.
really? Oh,
Oh,
interesting.
does it? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a thorn in everybody's side. Okay, so moving on to ordered collections, this is a case where nobody knew exactly what some of these things meant, and Dave wasn't in the room, so we thought, well, we need to clarify this. And the main goal is to model the fact that instances can occupy different positions in different collections. So for example, a runner places 12th in one marathon, 27th in the other. You can't attach the number 12 directly to this person. It makes no sense. So the basics of this model are we define, and by the way, this is not a new model. We've sort of seen this pattern in other ontologies. We define proxy individuals that relate that, for lack of a better term, real world item to the collection and define the position that it occupies in that collection. These proxy individuals could, if desired, record other information about the item that is specific to the collection, for example, the runner's race number. And we've removed the distinction between strict and non-strict ordered collections, which we had previously in GIST, so we allow for ties, same ranking. So here's an example of how this works. I'm a fan of bicycle racing, so this is an example I use. So we have a racer, Tadej Pogačar, who actually won the Tour de France. Okay, let me back up. Here are two ordered collections. Tour de France 2021 results and Vuelta a España 2019 results. You can follow this along in the turtle if you find that easier. So today got first in the Tour de France, but he placed only third a couple of years ago in the Vuelta. So obviously you can't attach these numbers to him directly. You need this proxy instance, which connects him to the collection and provides the sequence number. And as you can see, there's no direct connection between today and the collections themselves. Instead of using the sequence number, we could also use the proceeds directly so that we get the effect of a linked list and items can be referred without changing a bunch of sequence numbers. So these were the top three placers in Tour de France.
So is that sort of an either or for the implementer? They either use numbers or preceded by?
No, not necessarily. You can use, either one if you want. That's probably.
Yeah. Okay.
So the other change was in wanting to support all the numeric data types that OWL supports in expressing values for magnitude. So first we changed the name of the predicate from decimal value to numeric value, and then we extended the range from not just a decimal, but to all the OWL supported types of a special interest here is OWL rational, so that we can express fractions. That was actually needed in one of our client projects. So the model of networks, this is one of the things where we didn't create a new model, but we didn't exactly understand how it worked. So we added restrictions to make the semantics clear, and we also made the property names clearer. So just quickly, the model of a network is that there are things that are nodes in yellow and there are things that are links in blue. And each link links two different nodes, and it can be either a non-directional link like the one on the bottom, or a directional link, such as the one on the top. So using Peter's extremely nice diagramming tool, you can see the restrictions that a network has to have, has to have at least one member, which is either a network link or a network node. A network node is a member of a network, and a network link is the materialization of the connection between two network nodes. So a network node, a network link has to link two different nodes, and it's a member of a network. Let's see. I guess I've got a little bit more time. So with the person class, we wanted to improve the accuracy of the formal definition. The GIST 9.7 requires that a person have a name and a birth date. And we thought that these were not really parts of the definition of a person. You can have a person that doesn't yet have a name, and persons have legal rights before they're born, before they have birth dates. And of course, the very controversial issue of whether when personhood starts, whether before birth or after birth, is not something an ontology should be taking a stand on. So these are all constraints that properly belong in shackle. So if you're building, let's say, an HR system, obviously every person in that system has to have a name and a birth date, but that's not part of the meaning of the word, of the concept of person. So we removed that restriction requiring a name, and we made has birth date a subproperty of has start rather than has actual start, to so that the birth date may not actually have taken place, but we know there is will be a birth date at some point. So then a number of minor and patch changes. I'm not going to discuss the patches because they're just, as I said, minor bug fixes or annotation fixes. A couple of things that, a couple of interesting minor changes that we made. We defined a couple of predicates that are modeled after the schema predicates. Domain includes and range includes. People are waiting. Yeah. And the purpose here is to provide hints for expected usage without the entailments of RDFS domain and range. So for example, you can use has member, domain includes, organization, and collection. We're not formally restricting that, but we're suggesting how it could be used. And the other one was media types. We wanted to provide a standard set of media types without reinventing the wheel. So we adopted the IANA media types and expressed them in GIST terms. So here are a couple of examples. We gave them GIST unique text and a pref label and defined them as GIST media type. So what's ahead in future major releases? In our next major release, which is actually not going to be too far away because Dave has proposed a new model of times using data type properties rather than time instant, and we all think that's going to be much easier to use and much clearer, and obviously makes the graph much more concise. We're going to be dealing with whole part relationships. We're going to be dealing with units of measure and magnitudes, which is a topic Phil has done a lot of work on. We're going to be reviewing our geomodeling. We're going to remove most of the inverses we have unless there's a compelling reason for keeping one. And then not a major change, but we are going to revamp all our definitions and annotations. And of course, we always have our ongoing issue backlog that we address as we go along. So again, we really encourage participation. It's a public repository. So within the code repository itself, we have a contributing document which explains how to submit an issue or a PR, a style guide for editing GIST, which will contain all of these conventions we've discussed. There's a document about explaining our review and release process and our versioning pattern, and of course the release notes themselves. There's a wiki with the notes from our GIST issue review meetings, if you want to follow what we've been discussing and what we've been deciding. We organize our releases by GitHub projects, and so there's a project board if you want to track the progress of upcoming releases. You can do that. And of course, the issues themselves. So you can follow what's under discussion, add comments, add issues. These are all good ways of contributing to the development of GIST. That's the end. Any questions? Okay.
Steve has his hand up.
Okay. Steve?
I have a question about ordered collections.
Okay, let me go
And
back.
I think what I understood the slides was you showed, I think, 2 different ways to represent the same order, one using sequence and one using directly precedes.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, let me go back to that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I was wondering whether the equivalence of these 2 representations depends on some closed world assumption. Like, so suppose we've got just the directly precedes version. I think the idea is that the person who finished first is the person who didn't precede anything, right? But that only works assuming our precedes directly data is complete. Maybe Richard Carapaz actually preceded some other person and was 4th, but we just didn't have the 4th person represented, or the 3rd person that preceded them. So I don't know, it seems like maybe there's room to say like ordered collections have to be represented completely. That's somehow weaker than a full closed world assumption. It seems like something's needed there to make these equivalent.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I mean, we definitely don't want to rely just on the sequence numbers for the reason that I gave, that it, well, not in this particular case because the numbers aren't going to change, but in other cases of ordered collections, we want to be able to simply move the pieces around. Does anybody else have thoughts on the open closed world topic?
You know, I think that when we did this, there was some discussion of kind of that.
Mark, we can't hear you.
Okay, better?
Yeah.
Okay. If I recall, and I didn't think about the open world issue, but I think when we first discussed this, there are, some patterns like this will have a special property called like has first member or something like that, which I think, maybe was determined to be somewhat redundant. But I think with your point about open world, I wonder if something like that would be helpful, as you do know where the list starts, right? You do know that's the first member. Now in the open world, there could be ties and other things, but you would at least know that the collection has a first member, and then you could start to follow. You'd know what you do know. This is the first one, and these all precede it, but I don't know what I don't know.
Then it becomes like an RDF list, actually. Yeah. The other thing, yeah, I don't know what, that's a really good point. I think you may want to add an issue for that.
Or do we just go with the, making ourselves comfortable with the open world assumption, and as far as we know, this is the first in the ordered collection.
Mm-hmm.
I'll raise an issue for it. I think it's a good point,
yeah.
Steve.
I think it is an interesting point from a theoretical perspective. I don't know whether it's something we have to worry about, but I think Mark is right. We should at least give it some thought.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree.
So it's kind of subtle. It's very interesting observation, Steve.
Yeah. You know, the other thing I thought about when I was making these slides was that we don't have any way of expressing what we're using to order the collection. In other words, you could actually order Tour de France results in various, or Tour de France racers, let's say, in various ways, by their times, by their standing, by their number of stage wins. So it's possible that you could have a property to define what the property we're ordering on is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I actually like
it's kind of
putting
like
that on the order collection.
good,
As long as it's optional.
right? Yeah, you want it to be. I mean,
Oh,
like
yeah.
you go to all these websites with COVID stats and stuff. You can rank by
Yeah.
most recent cases, most recent deaths, 2-week running average, blah, blah. Yeah, so that's a good thing to have, but it should, like Mark said, it should be optional.
Yeah, no, it would have to be optional. So you can actually have a property, like suppose you had a property ordered by, it can point to a property, which is the thing that would order it. And then there's the question, is it the same ordered collection if you, are those two ordered collections if you have the same members ordered by different properties, or is it one ordered, because I think that would be two ordered collections, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. You're saying the exact same. In the world, there's, let's say, 4 things in a very specific order. You can represent those 4 things in that specific order in 2 different ways. To me, in the world, it's one thing.
No, I'm saying that, no, you could take the same group of people, the racers in the Tour de France, and order them in different ways.
Oh, right. Yep.
So then what the collection doesn't tell you is how we're ordering them. So you have this order, but you don't know what basis that ordering is on.
Oh, you mean the reason for ordering them? Oh, I see.
Right.
Oh, that's fascinating.
That's something I think we should.
That's where measures come in. There's a measure being made, and on the basis of that measure, it's the ordering relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have 3 people with their hands up: Dan, and then Michael Sullivan, and then Doug.
Okay. I was a little distracted early in the thing. Are we deprecating specifically, or especially the properties that we are renaming? You know, so they'll still be around for a little while, or are we in fact deleting them effective in 10.0?
So if this were a minor release, we would deprecate them. But because this is a major release, we're throwing away the just deprecated file on every major release. So they're actually being removed.
Okay, good to know. Thanks.
Good. Michael Sullivan.
Yeah, I think you need to distinguish between a list and an array, because if it's array-like, meaning the list has multiple ways of sorting, that should be left up to the application. You don't want to make assumptions. Whereas if it's just a list, you know, a list of people, a list of records, a list of, you know, my top movies, where, you know, I'm the editor, I'm the owner of the list, then yes, you can have a defined sorter. But the only thing I might suggest is if you want to expand this to address arrays, particularly when you use shackle, you might want to have some sort of way of identifying which columns in the table, basically, are sortable. And other than that, I would distinguish between a table-like view of your data and just a single list-like view. Lists need orders. The assumption is the owner of the list has determined an order and that the application should honor that order since there's no other columns in the data to sort anyway. Whereas when you have an array, like a table, you know, we should leave that up to the application as to order. You can put a default order, but the assumption really is that it's the application that's going to make the determinant. Particularly the end user may very well want to sort things by price, sort things by date, sort things by country, whatever. And I would not put that in the database. I think that's a mistake. And I think once you realize you distinguish between these two things, it becomes clear why one's required. A simple list requires an order versus an array. The developer who's building the application is going to determine that for you.
Well, I'll say a couple of things. I'm not quite sure I'm understanding you completely. An array has, I don't understand the distinction you're making between list and array, because an array also has an order. We do have collections, so if you want a group of things that aren't ordered, it's just a collection rather than an ordered collection. Yeah, and then I guess otherwise I don't really understand. I don't understand the reference to tables.
Well, a table is an array. I mean, so in terms of the payload coming back, my query will generate a table basically, and then as the application owner, I can sort it. The table, of course, is created by the Sparkle query. So if I get back price and quantity and whatever, in my shopping basket or whatever, it's the application that's going to choose the sort order. Whereas if you are publishing a list of your top favorite movies of all time, then it's important to identify these items, which may have other attributes, but I own this list. It's not just data. So it's the list itself that's taking precedence. And I think you should distinguish between the two, because you may want to order things, as a way of, I don't know, I'll use the word shopping cart, even though that's probably a bad example. But as you put things into your shopping cart, the order may be initially interesting, but ultimately people may want to sort things by category or whatever. And that's, again, up to the application. So I think.
Yes, sir. What change are you actually proposing then? I'm not clear on that.
Well, it would be this one here. It's more of a counter to, we need to identify, there was some discussion a few minutes ago about what kinds of sorting is allowed.
Yeah, if I might, I think the distinction there, Michael, and maybe this is satisfied, is what you're referring to as an array is in the application, not in the database.
Yeah.
Well, the application will decide that it doesn't want just a list; it wants more data. And once you receive more data in your payload, then the application is going to, regardless of what hints you've given in terms of sort order, the application is going to override that.
Right. Yeah. But.
So basically, how would you craft a query to create a list of links to your favorite movies, right? I'm an editor, and I'm editing the homepage of my blog or whatever, And, I got an article that says, whatever, here's my top 10 lists, my favorite movies of all time. And of course, movies are just lists of entities, right? But of course, there are other attributes. So if I query the data a little bit differently, I might get back the movie and the date and the lead actor, the lead actress, the media producer, and all of a sudden I'm now dealing with an array. And so the order is not that important because the application may decide, well, I'd like to see how this data looks like grouped by producer or director or whatever.
But I think in that example, again, I think the array is in the user interface, not in the database, right?
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
And it's really, I guess the issue I'm having is that how do we prescribe to developers how to build applications against our data when we're not asking them to be experts in our data, and that the data is rather mutable and evolvable. So how do you discover things that you don't know, right? As a developer, I don't want to be a data expert. I'm a coder. I'm a front end guy. I want to know how to query this thing, and I want to be able to build a list of whatever I want, right? Whatever the business users have told me. I need a list of movies, and that means I need a list of links, and maybe I need other attributes. How do I fetch all this stuff without being a data expert? And so, in my opinion, if there's a need somewhere in all of this for discoverability, knowing what how do I know what I don't know, basically. And I think the whole industry has gotten to the point where it says, well, one answer is shackle, because that basically says, good, once you know the shape, then you know what you're querying. But what if you don't know what the shape is, right? How do you discover it?
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. Okay, can we go to Doug, Steve, and then Michael Ushold?
So, two things. One on, I'm sorry, I can't remember the name of the guy who was just talking. Is it Mark? Steve? I don't know. Sorry. But in the question of a shopping cart, I don't see that as an ordered collection. You could put stuff into it in a certain order, but it's not really important whether your lime comes before your salad, your lettuce, or whatever. That's not really important. But the question on the example that we have here, where we've got the Tour de France results and the Vuelta a España results, presumably those instance of results are about a particular sequence of cyclists. Now, it could be, it could be the overall time, it could be the split times, it could be the jersey number, whatever, but it's, and you can, of course, you can change the order of how you present that on the screen, but I think that is truly an ordered collection in the data, because once you've said that your collection is about a particular ordering, that's true regardless of how you present it. I just wanted to ask a question though to Rebecca in this particular case. Well, yeah, if you did want to represent the race ordering in a different way, does that imply that we need a whole new set of proxies for all the cyclists?
Well, okay, so so there would be different ordered collections. This is the ordered collection of Tour de France racers by race result. There could be there could be a different ordered collection of Tour de France 2021 racers by jersey numbers, and another one. So what I'm saying is each ordered collection could have another property hanging off that that is the property by which the members are being ordered, and the proxies are different. A proxy
They are
is-
different. They are different. That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
It's different proxy instances,
A
in fact.
proxy is unique to a collection and an instance.
Okay,
Okay,
that's good.
otherwise, I mean, you can't, if you go to reusing proxies, you'll end up with exactly the same problem you have without the proxies, you know, see what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Were there other questions?
I mean, this is, I think, a follow-up to the same point. So I feel like I'm in the weeds on this question about pulling back an array in the UI versus having an ordered collection in the data. And so, I mean, I think I get the model, and I'm not sure that the stuff about what you want to pull back in the UI is a problem for the model. It seems like it's just a different thing. So suppose I've got all my results of, my ordered collections of racer results, and if I want to order them in a different way, it sounded like maybe I have to make a new ordered collection to do that, but I don't think that's right. It seems like all I got to do is write the query for the things that I want to present and then order them by one of the variables I pull back.
Right.
So it seemed like I could do like all the stuff that you want presentation wise without like making new ordered collections.
No, well, sure, but if you want to semantically capture this same group of people in different ways, you can create different ordered collections. It might be significant for you to do so. I want to know, so in bicycle racing, you can actually have 30 people with the same final time, but they have different positions, right? So there's a winner, even if 30 other people have the same time. So you might want a collection that just shows you the times in some order, you know, the person and their times, or you might want a collection that shows you the actual final standings. And those are two semantically different collections. It doesn't mean you can't, it doesn't mean a user interface can't take the individuals and order them by, you know, shoe size if they want to. But there are, you know, there are cases where there's significance to different orderings of the same set of individuals.
Okay. So,
Okay.
I mean, it seems like to handle that, you might want something to just automatically make you ordered collections when you find interesting ones. Like, let me write some query, pull back some results, order them, and then say, the first one is the first one in this collection, the rest of them precede that one. I don't know, however you do it.
I think all that's outside the ontology, though. In other words, I agree with Rebecca. If you want to model an ordered collection, you have to say, here's what the order is. If someone wants to grab that collection and order it some other way, have at it. If they want to persist it, they'd persist it as a different one. I think if you have a bunch of stuff that's a collection and you want to let people order it however they want, you would just make it not an ordered collection, but just a simple collection, and then off they could go and slice and dice it any way they want.
Hang on, watching the time here, we got Michael and Matthias have their hands up.
I'll just say one quick thing about that too, is it's not always that the application knows how it wants to order things. Sometimes the application says, give me the Tour de France 2021 results. And that has to be in the data, not in the application. Anyway, go ahead.
Michael. Ushold.
Sorry, on mute. The comment Dave made earlier about, these are standard data structures, linked lists, etc. And we don't want to, for the most part, be reproducing these kinds of things in ontology. So I'm just kind of an open question. How do we imagine this thing actually getting used in real life? And if we had big, long lists, would we want to be doing it in the ontology or some other way? I don't know.
I have a quick one, and that's
I have a quick
ordering
one too.
processes, ordering process flow.
That's why, my other one that's way simpler is you just like on Amazon when they sell used books, you have to know that excellent is better than good, is better than okay, is better than fair, is better than crappy. Because if you don't order that collection, it's not useful.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay, Matthias.
They just become tags.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Mhm.
Matthias.
It's this example with the like the races and the order. What I don't get is why do you have to make proxies? Because you're actually ordering the same person. It's just the position that changed with regards to what is the competition.
Right.
So if you would have like the sequence as an object property rather than data property, then you could say that it's the first position with regard to Tour de France 2021.
Well, so you want, but first of all, the Tour de France is a thing, it's an object, and you want to have multiply data properties like position in the Tour de France 2021, position in the Tour de France 2020, position in the Tour of Oman 2019. I mean, the number of data object properties you'd have to have, or data type properties you'd have to have, would be indefinitely large, and wouldn't have.
No, it's like I have in my for the work I'm doing, I've been reviewing those videos about categorized by, and so that's why I've got this idea in my head is the number, like the sequence number. You just say this is this it's like using categorized by for this sequence number. You say this sequence number is actually right for this specific competition. I don't know.
How would you? So if the number one, obviously, if the number one is attached to Tadej Pogacar, it doesn't mean anything. One what? One in what? So you have to have a way of connecting that position to that person to the collection.
Yeah. I don't know how to. I would have like if you directly say that I can't pronounce that name. Tadej Pogacar is member of Tour de France result, and you say sequence 1 and sequence 3, and then you just say that the 3 is for it's just like kind of rearranging the arrows. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
I think you
I
might
would have to do.
I think you wind up having instances. You'd wind up having an instance of a sequence in a sense of saying like this is an instance of sequence 3, but it actually means connecting Tadej to the thing. You're just moving the problem around.
Yeah,
really.
yeah, but right, that's kind of the inside out version, and there's a reason not to do that actually, because I mentioned this model allows you to attach other information to this proxy. For example, Tadej Pogacar also had race jersey 1, number 1 here. You don't want to say Tadej Pogacar has race jersey number 1 or has jersey number 1 in and of itself. He doesn't. It's in relationship to this particular race that he wore jersey number 1. There's a project I'm working on with incarnation lineages, which is an ordered collection basically, where people have different names in the context of that lineage. So it's not just that they have a name, it's that in relation to that collection they have a name. So these proxies allow you to express things other than the sequencing.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. No, I get why. Thanks.
Anyone else? Does anyone else have their hand raised? Or?
Nope, look like we got them all.
Okay.
That was an excellent session, a nice upgrade. And when did you say it's going to be out there?
The 10th. We're targeting the 10th. Well,
Thank
we're going to commit to the 10th this time. That's a hard date.
Okay, good.
Pushing it around.
10.0 on the 10th?
Yep.
You don't want to make it October 10th and be 10,
Oh,
10, 10?
yeah, because you want to.
No.
You want to expand the scope, Dave. You want to shovel some more stuff in.
Okay,
Thanks, everyone.
take care.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Bye.
Thank you.